Good morning, Sri Lanka. You're watching MTV Sports, and it's a Monday morning, a great start to the week, and it's the 22nd of October 2012. I hope you're enjoying the weather because it's slightly getting cooler towards heading on to November as well. But let's take a look at the headlines and what the front of the Daily Mirror has to say. Starting off with the local story, UMP ready for talks with government, says Ranil. Opposition and UMP leader Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday said his party was ready for a dialogue with the government on resolving the crisis with regards to what he called brewing conflict between the judiciary and the executive. And the pictures show here Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe sharing a joke with a young lawyer during a get-together organized by the National Lawyers Association yesterday. And moving on, regulate international schools. The National Child Protection Authority has called for the intervention of the Education Ministry, and they've requested to regulate international schools in the country, pointing out that they receive a large number of complaints relating to incidents of child abuse taking place in such institutions. So there we go. Regulate international schools, says the National Child Protection Authority. And moving on, there's another story of prison officers being among the 6 who were arrested. Now, at least 6 persons, including 3 prison officers, were arrested on Saturday night after a fight broke out in Negombo Beach, said the police. So 6 prison officers, together with a few others, have been arrested, and the police says that this has been because of a fight which broke out in the Negombo Beach. And also, back to the front page. Now, this is a very interesting story. The headline reads, "Dead man comes home." So, a man who had been missing from home for some time, he's been missing home for some time, and his son had identified a body lying at the Culture Hospital and has identified that as his father. But then, in the weekend, he had returned back home, and it was, probably a pleasant surprise for the family members as well, who had previously thought that this man had died. But then over the weekend he has turned back home, and an interesting story there as well. So moving on to some business news. GSP Plus, the loss calculated from the GSP Plus is topping US 1 billion. The loss of Sri Lanka's GSP Plus facility to the European Union may have cost the country's garment industry as much as US 1 billion. According to former Secretary General of the Joint Apparel Association Forum, he says that speaking from practical experience and what he's been told by people in the industry, the loss of GSP Plus may have cost the apparel industry about 1 billion. And what he's saying is that what's probably worse is that Sri Lanka is not taking steps to reapply for the GSP Plus facility as well. And also in business news, taking a look at the stock market. Now, the blue chips and fundamentally sound stocks are the key contributors to the recent revival of the Colombo Stock Exchange. The rebound in the Colombo stock market between late July and end September has largely been emphatic, though a few skeptics continue to write it off as being not genuine or link it to play on junk and speculative stocks. Now, the brokers say that attractive opportunities still exist in the stock market, and it can be seen clearly after the sharp gain in September. And that's the look at some of the business stories as well. Moving on to an international story. Now, this is bad news for those of you film lovers, especially those of you who watch Bollywood movies. Filmmaker Yash Chopra dies at 80. Veteran filmmaker Yash Chopra, known as one of the king of in the Bollywood romantic films, has died on Sunday, just weeks after announcing that he would not direct any more movies. He was 80 years old when he died, and it's very saddening news, especially for those of you who are Bollywood fans. And also, taking a look at the sports stories. Now, over the weekend, the round 3 of the Bledisloe Cup happened, and Australia were nursing a lot of injuries in their side, but they managed to come strong against the Kiwis, who looked really out of form. And although the Kiwis came in as favourites, they were unable to put up the same performance as they did all year long. Now, we were saying how they were repeatedly making some very good performances. Now the pictures show a shot of the match, and the match ended in a draw. And the Kiwi coach, speaking after the match at the press conference, said that although this is not the end of the world, this is certainly disappointing, and that they'll be looking to amend their mistakes going forward in this tournament. And taking a look at some of the other sports news in development stories of sports, inaugural Premier League brings hope to young Afghans. Now, Afghanistan, we saw participating in the 2020 World Cup as well, and they were pretty good sportsmen, and this is also something that's probably a very good development in terms of sports. The feeling of optimism in the air was imminent in the air, because the inaugural Premier League game happened in Afghanistan, and the pictures showed earlier were some of the soccer players who were standing at attention before the final match of the Afghan Premier League. And there we go, Afghan Premier League kicks off, and it's definitely something that they can look forward to, and it says that it will definitely bring some hope to the young sportsmen in Afghanistan. And moving on to some local news as well. There were a few sports events happening over the weekend. The Bishop's College and Ladies College annual hockey encounter happened over the weekend as well, where Bishop's College managed to win their second consecutive title, because they won it for the first time last year as well, and this time they came back strong and managed to win it with a scoreline of 1-0. Also taking a look at a local cricket story, the inter-school cricket roundup, and we have a few news about that as well. St. Joseph's College and Mahinda Vidyalaya, at the end St. Joseph's College managed to score 201, and in reply Mahinda College only managed to score 192. That was some of the cricket matches that happened over the weekend as well. Moving on, yet another saddening story. Tony Greig, who is a veteran cricket commentator and is also, I would say, sort of an ambassador for Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan cricket as well, because he comes for almost every single match that Sri Lanka plays anywhere in the world. He has been diagnosed with cancer, and that's very sad, and we hope that that he might be able to keep on bringing those commentaries as well, because I know everyone enjoys Tony Greig and everyone enjoys seeing him at the matches as well. So that's a look at some of the sports stories as well. And in entertainment news, the Miss International competition was held off, and good news for all of us Sri Lankans. Miss Sri Lanka, who was Miss, I think it was Miss Madhusha, Madhusha Mayadunne, was placed the second runners-up in the Miss International competition, and that's very good news for us. And Miss Japan won the title, but Sri Lanka's Madhusha Mayadunne was selected as the second runners-up at the 52nd Miss International pageant held in Japan. So there we go. That's good news in terms of Sri Lankan and beauty culture coming into development as well. Now after the commercial break, we will have a few stories for you, interesting stories from all around the world, and things that you will definitely enjoy. But let's take a short commercial break, and we will be back on Good Morning Sri Lanka. Welcome back to Good Morning Sri Lanka on MTV Sports. Now, just before the commercial break, we were taking a look at the headlines and the stories that's been happening over the weekend as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have an interesting story talking about religions and different cultural festivals and the rituals involved with it. Now, in India, in the northern province of India, they engage in a traditional buffalo fighting fair. And this is with the aim to appease their deities and to preserve the tradition and religious beliefs of rural areas in the northern province of India. So let's take a look at that.
Locals in hill town of Shimla thronged the traditional buffalo fighting fair on Sunday with an aim to please their deities and to preserve the tradition and religious beliefs of rural areas in Pont village of India's northern Himachal Pradesh state. This fair is a centuries-old tradition and would continue in the upcoming times as well. Our elders have told us that watching buffalo fights bring good fortune. It also provides good entertainment for the people. People come from far-flung areas to participate in the field, said Baldev, an organizer. Every year this fair is organized in the months of October and November. Villagers from far-off places brought their buffaloes for the traditional fight in which the specially reared buffaloes were brought to the ring and then provoked for the duel. The fair was organized to pay tribute to local deity Nag and Hindu god Saturn for the peace and prosperity and to preserve the century-old tradition. The sport of buffalo fighting is considered to be an entertaining activity for the spectators who cheer in anticipation when the specially reared animals are brought to the ring. Another belief attached to the fair is that all women who do not have children are able to conceive after watching this fair. The locals celebrate this fair with fervour and zeal, with active participation of elders as well as children.